Hello everyone, welcome to this week's lesson. Today I'm going to continue on in our series of lessons that focus on the book, The Four Agreements. And this week, well, we're going to wrap up Don't Make Assumptions. So don't assume it, how that's going to end up. Three scriptures for today. The first one is 1 Samuel 16:7, and it reads, "The Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Remember that. Second one is from Proverbs 25, verse 8, and it reads, "Don't jump to conclusions." Let me repeat that. Don't jump to conclusions. There may be a perfectly good explanation for what you just saw. How many times do you jump to conclusions? Third one, 1 John 1, 8 through 9 reads, "If we say that we have no sin, or that we, never make a mistake, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, our shortcomings, he who is faithful and just will forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness." Our wisdom quotes. When I was growing up, my brother, who graduated in the year of 1969, his class had this as their class motto. And it always just kind of stuck with me that there's something really deep about this. And today I really understand it much, much more. It says, "All that glitters is not gold." Thank you, William Shakespeare, for that wonderful quote. All that glitters is not gold. The next wisdom quote today is, "A good life is when you assume nothing, do more, smile often, dream big, laugh a lot, and realize how blessed you are for what you have." And the last one, which is by Dodinsky, "The best apology is simply admitting your mistake. The worst apology is dressing up your mistake with the rationalizations to make it look as though you were not really wrong, but just misunderstood." Now, I'm pretty sure all of you will remember the four agreements, but just in case, I'm going to give you just this quick refresher of the four agreements themselves. The first one is be impeccable with your word. Second one is don't take anything personally. Third is don't make assumptions. And last, always do your best. So last week, I began talking about this third agreement, don't make assumptions, and how the stories we make up without knowing all the facts is the source of our personal and collective pain and chaos, as well as it molds and shapes our world around us. Now, at first, when I began working with this agreement, I found that I took it very seriously. And when I realized I was making up a story about something, I would beat myself up. Have you ever done such a thing? You make a mistake and you beat yourself up? Well, today I understand that beating myself up was a story in my head that I had heard. Somewhere along the road of life, I had picked up and perceived that it is what one does when they make a mistake. But now I know that it was an assumption I made years ago that never motivated me to change. Now, today, I know that there is no need to continue to beat myself up. Once I realized the storyline, I began to reprogram my response, and now when I make a mistake, I claim it as an opportunity. I say, "Great, I have learned another way of not doing something." Then I go on with saying, "Okay, what's next?" Today, when I find myself making up a story, I see it in a whole different light, a totally different perspective. I am still learning to take any shortcoming in a light-hearted, non-condemning way. I honestly now have fun catching myself when I'm in the midst of assuming that I know someone's story, and I don't. So when I do that, I just start laughing at myself and say, "Oh, I can make up a whole lot of stuff." And you see, that right there helps me from making more stories up because I caught myself. So today, we're going to look at why we make assumptions and what those assumptions do. I love to tell the story. Remember that song? Remember the wonderful story and the wonderful thoughts and beliefs that are held up just in I love to tell the story. My father, speaking of stories, my father had a great imagination. And when I was growing up, he would tell me and the neighborhood kids, he would make up such amazing and wonderful stories. They were so intriguing and just captivating. And, being kids, we would listen and believe without question the truth of his stories. I mean, taking them literally. Now, my father would tell his tales, which always had a moral and safety message. But, nevertheless, his stories would captivate the minds of his listeners. And so it is true of all of us. We get captivated in people's stories. So as I grew up, my dad's story expanded to include people that we did not know. And that it would also include people that we would see at the mall or in a store. None of which of these individuals my father personally knew, but rather he would make up a story and I would sit in amazement at how smart he was because he knew so much about those he watched. For instance, one day we had gone to the Glenbrook Mall in the neighboring town of Fort Wayne, Indiana. For us, small town people, this mall was like a fantasy land. Well, at least it was magical for me when I was quite young. I remember on this particular day, my mother was at L.S. Ayres department store. It was a great department store. So anyway, my dad got tired of looking around the store, so he said he was heading out to the mall. I assumed that was an invitation, so I went with. Now, we found the perfect spot to watch people come out through the doors of the store. And as we were sitting there, my dad saw a guy walk out of the store, and he told me that he was a doctor. His wife was inside the store buying a mink coat. He said it seems that the doctor had cheated on his wife, so he was trying to make up for it. He told her to buy a mink coat. Now, little did I know that my dad had seen this man with his wife in the store a little bit earlier, and she was already wearing a mink coat. So when she came out of the store wearing one, I assumed that what he said was the absolute truth. But it wasn't. It was an assumption and a story that he had made up. Now, as I thought about it, though, now mind you, I could not have been more than 8 or 9 years old. I remember beginning to feel sorry for the woman that her husband had cheated on her. Like, how could he do that? I thought how awful that would be to go through. Then my thoughts shifted, and I was saddened even more to think about how the doctor could even think that everything would be made right by having her purchase a mink coat. That just didn't seem right to me. And just like in life, I quickly moved on from this story as my dad was making up another one about this lawyer and how his kids disowned him. Now, here's the deal. Even though the story was made up about the doctor and his wife and the lawyer and his kids, the story stuck in my head. And even today, I find myself at times having issues with people who think they can get away with something, or those who try to buy forgiveness. You see, it's such innocence. We believe that what others say is true, even if it's a made-up story. And the interesting part is, when we believe these stories as facts, it influences our thoughts, words, judgments, and in turn, our actions. These stories can still influence your life today, unless you realize they are just that, a story. There are stories made up in our imaginations and fostered by our assumptions. Now, there is a big dance of conflicting thoughts going on within every human mind. Our conflicting views create a whole lot of chaos. Our inner mental conflicts causes us to misinterpret everything and to misunderstand everything. We only see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. We don't perceive things actually the way they are. So I became aware of this a while back when I read this quote and took it to contemplate. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Let me say that again. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. So, why do we make assumptions in the very first place? Well, Don Miguel writes, it is very interesting how the human mind works. We seemingly have a need to justify everything, to explain and to understand everything in order to feel safe. Now, we have millions of questions that need to be answered because there are so many things that the reasoning mind cannot explain. It is not important if the answer is correct unknowingly, just as long as the answer itself makes us feel safe. This is why we make assumptions. Now, if others tell us something, we make assumptions. And if they don't tell us something, we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know. Even if we hear something and we don't understand, we will make an assumption about what it means and then believe the assumptions as facts. We make all sorts of assumptions because we somehow believe we don't have the courage or the right to even ask questions. That's another story. That is another assumption. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people that has a lot of questions and about nearly everything. But if you are a little bit like me, you probably found out early on that it is not safe to ask questions, especially in Sunday school. I will never forget the day that I was sitting in Sunday school, and I can see the room right now. I know that there were books in behind me. I don't remember who the teacher was, but I remember this day because as we sat there, the thought came to my mind is, okay, there was Adam and then there was Eve, and they had 2 children. Where did those women show up? Where did they come from? So I asked my Sunday school teacher, and my Sunday school teacher looked at me and said, there are some things you just don't ask. Oops. So there I learned. Don't ask questions. Now, assumptions affect everything and everyone. Now, I want to look at an assumption that many fall into, and it's in the name of love. We have unknowingly agreed that if people love us, they should know what we want, what we need, and how we feel. When we believe something, we assume we are right about it to the point that we will even destroy our relationships in order to defend our position. For instance, we make a big assumption that others see life the way we do. We assume that our friends and families think the way we think, feel the way we feel, and judge the way we judge. This is one of the biggest assumptions that humankind makes. And this is why we have the fear of being ourselves around others. Because we think everyone else will judge us, victimize us, abuse or blame us because, well, to be honest, that's what we somehow unknowingly do ourselves. So even before others have a chance to reject us, we put up our wall, we put up our hand, and we reject them first. Now here's a different example of making an assumption that I see happening in our world today. Someone tells you that a friend of yours is voting for someone who you believe should not be elected. Now, just out of this single statement, whether it be true or not, most people will have a tendency to judge them. Without knowing the truth, many will begin treating them differently, sometimes even making them into an enemy. And I have witnessed many who will distance themselves from those who think differently in order to make them feel superior. Ah, yes, another ego-driven action. Now, many times this line of thought creates a great separation and results in the person finding themselves very sad, angry, and alone because they have judged everyone around them as being wrong. Sometimes it takes years to realize that your judgment was an error. When you awaken to what you have done, I find that the best thing you can do is to make amends. Admit you made a mistake. Now, there's no need to judge yourself harshly for judging another. Just learn from it. Go to the person you have incorrectly judged and ask for forgiveness. This is where most people stop. They will think about going to that person, and then they won't. But if you do, it's so important to realize that you need to be sincere in your apology. And an apology is really only self-serving at this point if you don't change your actions. Now, just imagine the day that you decide to stop making assumptions with your partner, your friends, your family, with your minister, and with everyone else you encounter. Your way of communicating will change completely, and your relationships will no longer suffer from conflicts created by mistaken assumptions. One way you can help yourself from making assumption is to start owning that you don't know everything. One of the hardest things we seldom want to admit is we don't know the answer. And out of fear, we don't want to look stupid, we will not ask questions. Now, how is that for an assumption? Another way to keep yourself from making assumptions is to ask questions. Make sure your communication is clear and honest. Especially if you're not clear about something, just ask. If you want your life to work and not be filled with drama, you have to muster up the courage to override your fear of being judged. Ask enough questions until you understand what they are trying to communicate. Once you understand, you will no longer need to make assumptions, and you will know how to proceed forward. The day you stop making assumptions will be the day your life will no longer be adding to the emotional poison which once ruled your world. Without making assumptions, your word becomes impeccable. Now, with clear communication, your relationships are going to change because you are speaking from a level of honesty and a place of understanding. You no longer will have a need or an excuse to make assumptions because everything is clear. You can state what it is that you want, and others can state what they want. And by not taking anything personally, everyone wins. If humanity begins speaking at this level of honesty and communicated in this way, I believe that there would be no wars. There would be no violence, no misunderstandings. See, we would take a moment and just imagine how wonderful your life would be if people just communicated clearly what they wanted and to disclose their motive if they even know what it is. We, as spiritual beings, having a human experience, have created a myriad of mental habits and routines of which we are not even aware of. Becoming aware of these habits, like making assumptions, is the first step in the process of transforming your life. Just know that having an understanding that we make assumptions is not enough to stop us from making more assumptions. What really transforms us is to take ownership of what we are doing and vowing to make the changes, and then, surprise, you've got to take action on that. Now, information or an idea is merely a seed in your mind. Taking action over and over again in the direction of improving yourself is going to create a new foundation for a better way of living. You will need to nurture yourself by continually being impeccable with your words and talking and telling yourself the truth. Be very mindful to use your words to reflect your honest intention. Use words that support what you are in the midst of creating. By doing this repeatedly, you are literally rewriting old, worn-out ways of thinking. Once mastered, your life is transformed for the better. And as you transform your thoughts, your feelings will also be transformed. As Dr. Emily Cady once said, you cannot have a feeling without a thought creating it. So, as you are transforming your thoughts and emotions about what you want to experience, you will begin to emit a different vibrational energy. And in time, and in accord with the energy you most frequently exude, will be reflected back to you through your experiences. When done with the intention of creating personal freedom, you will, at some point, realize the truth of what I am teaching. Now, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for tuning in today. And a very special thank you to all of you who continue to support this ministry. Your ongoing prayers and your financial contributions are truly necessary to keep us operating. So if you care to contribute in a financial way, you can send your tithe or gift to Unity Life Enrichment Center. You can make your check out to Unity, but it's Unity Life Enrichment Center at 10417 South Orange Blossom Boulevard, Sebring, Florida 33875. Again, our address is 10417 South Orange Blossom Boulevard, Sebring, Florida 33875. Also, right below this video, we have made it possible for you to give online, if that works for you. If you have a prayer request, I ask you to simply call the office, 863-471-1122, and leave your message. Messages are checked daily. Be assured your request will remain confidential. If you wish, you can also send your request and any comments or questions about the lesson via email. And our email address is unitysebring@gmail.com. Now, if you are in need of someone to pray with you, let me suggest Silent Unity. And their phone number is 1-800-669-7729. That's 1-800-669-7729. And when you call that, there will be a person, a live person, on the other end of the phone who will join with you in one-on-one prayer. And then your prayer request, as with all prayer requests that we receive, will be prayed over for the next 30 days. And they have someone sitting in our prayer chapel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and have been doing that for over 120 years. Now, if you are on Facebook, you are invited to join me and Adam Abbott on Sunday mornings around 10:30 a.m. on our Facebook page. There you can join us in a time of meditation and prayer. If you have not yet liked our Facebook page, please do so now. The link to the Like Us is to the right of this video. Select the link and you will have access to us on your own page. Our Board of Trustees has once again sought Spirit's guidance, and the directive this week is wait yet another week. We'll be so glad when Spirit allows us and tells us that we can open. With that, however, the center will remain closed through at least August 30th. Join us in constant prayer to see this pandemic pass and healing begin, plus that we have so many more or less positive cases and deaths being reported, especially in our area. Please know that the board will continue to seek Spirit's guidance each week as to what action we are to take for the overall good of our conversation. I personally ask each of you to pray for every soul who has contracted COVID-19. See the light of God moving in and through them now, restoring them to wholeness. Please hold their families, their friends, and all of our frontline workers as well in your prayers. See them as having a revelation knowing that God is within them as they sojourn forth, knowing that they are loved and supported as they do a great and mighty work. I invite you to see everyone taking everything necessary, every necessary precaution to remain healthy. See people realizing that washing your hands and wearing a mask is an act of compassion and love. Let us be the ones who show the way by wearing a mask, by practicing social distancing, washing our hands, and holding the high watch, knowing that with God, we all will move through this together as one with ease and with grace. This, my friends, is how you can be a channel of God's love into our world. So, until we meet again, check yourself often to see what you're assuming about something you've just seen or something you've just heard or something you've just witnessed. Ask yourself, what's the truth behind all of this? And I think you will find that you make up a whole lot of stories, just like I do, about everything. Now, I affirm that you are whole and healthy, and I affirm you and I continue to spread the love and joy of God within, with everyone you think about and everyone you meet. So, until the next time, we'll see you here next week. Peace and bye for now.